technology, but still a great deal of interest in that. We had our reception at the Chemical Heritage Foundation on Sunday night, and there was, of course, a good deal of information about polymers and plastics. Nylon was strongly featured, and also some very interesting art pieces from injection or blow molding machines that someone conceived as art. I was walking down the street yesterday past a sign store, made commercial signs, and they had a sign in the window that says, "We sell plastic." I haven't seen a sign like that in quite some time, and so it's appropriate perhaps that our next talk is with the prototypical plastic, polyethylene, and our speaker is from Dow Chemical Company, Dr. Rajen Patel.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everybody. This morning I'm going to talk about history of innovations in polyethylene industry. And when you talk about polyethylene, basically you're talking about three things: catalyst, process, and products. So I'm going to go through the history of innovations over the last 75 years. First of all, I would like to acknowledge my co-authors, Bruce Story, Pradeep Jain, Steve Chung. I would like to acknowledge Dow Chemical Company for allowing me to write the chapter and allowing me to come here and present it. And foremost, I would like to acknowledge the Division of Industry and Chemistry for putting this session together and inviting me to give this opportunity to talk about polyethylene. So in the agenda today, I'm going to talk about the current status of polyethylene, history of innovations in the area of catalysts, processes, product and application. I'll talk about some recent advances and some concluding remarks. This is a nice picture actually I got from a site called molecurium.com, which basically shows a long polyethylene chain. Basically it consists of carbon and hydrogen. And polyethylene is a simple molecule, yet it's a very complex molecule because you can arrange this carbon and hydrogen in many, many different ways, by the way. And as a result, you can actually combine this carbon hydrogen in many, many different ways. You can make polyethylene with different molecular architecture. And over the last 75 years, basically about 10 to 11 major types of polyethylene have been commercialized. So because of this many, many possibilities of combining carbon and hydrogen with some additional co-monomers, there are many, many types of polyethylene, even though it's mostly carbon and hydrogen. And I'll just go through quickly on that one. The first one that was synthesized or discovered was high pressure low density polyethylene. Then of course polar copolymers, so-called ethylene vinyl acetate copolymers. Then there are other polar copolymers such as acid copolymers, acrylate copolymers that are commercialized later on. Ionomers from DuPont were commercialized. With advent of Ziegler-Natta catalyst, high density polyethylene, subsequently ultra high density polyethylene, linear low density polyethylene, very low density polyethylene. And about 15 years ago, another big step up in revolution was metallocene catalyzed polyethylene. And very recently actually Dow Chemical basically discovered a way to make olefin block copolymer, which was, if 10 years ago somebody would ask me, would it be possible, I say, you're dreaming. But somebody found a way to catalytically make an olefinic block copolymer. This is basically just a simple structure just to let people know what polyethylene is. In case of high pressure low density, you basically get carbon hydrogen main chain, then you get short chain branches, you get long chain branches. If you have an ethylene vinyl acetate copolymer, you get long chain branch, short chain branch, and also some of the short chain branch comes from the vinyl acetate comonomer. In the case of acrylic acid, some of the short chain branch comes from the acrylic acid comonomer. High density polyethylene, basically that picture I showed earlier on, a long molecule of carbon hydrogen. You can have occasional short chain branches to lower the density slightly if you want it. And of course, one of the major class of polymer is linear density polyethylene, where you have not many short chain branches. In this particular case, the comonomer is octene based, so you get 2 carbon going to the main chain and a short chain hanging out of the chain with 6 carbon long short chain. So the previous speaker talked about ammonia synthesis. He mentioned about 150 million tons of ammonia produced this year. Polyethylene is about half of that. In fact, in 2008, the demand of polyethylene will be about 75 million metric tons. So it is very, very huge polymer out there. Translates to about 165 billion pounds. So polyethylene is the largest volume plastic out there. In fact, most of it probably will go to the landfill and we'll build houses on top of it. But you can actually burn this polyethylene, generate the calorific value. You can recycle as well. And more or less, the polyolefin demand is growing is because, as I say in the next slide, there's a continuous displacement of the traditional substrate with polymers and specifically with polyethylene. In fact, with the Walmart sustainability emphasis, a lot of this other packaging material, wood, glass, paper, cardboards, they are not as environmentally friendly. And there is a lot of drive to convert a lot of this substrate into polymer-based material. Of course, there's always a need towards lightweighting, down-gauging, and sustainable packaging. And I think polyethylene is one of the green polymers out there, and it's highly efficient in transporting and packaging materials. Also, the new technologies allowing developments of new products and application over a number of years. And as the previous speaker mentioned, the world population is growing, so polyethylene consumption will grow with the GDP. If you look at the history of polyethylene innovation, it basically started in 1933 with the discovery of high pressure low density by ICI. Then in 1953, Professor Ziegler developed the catalyst to make high density polyethylene. Then DuPont introduced EVA copolymers in mid-50s. DuPont also introduced in mid-60s Ziegler-Natta catalyzed linear low density polyethylene, only in Canada, by the way. And subsequently Carbide and Dow introduced linear low density in US and of course worldwide. Then so-called very low density polyethylene were introduced. A big step up, as I said, was metallocene catalyzed polyethylene in 1990. Recently, Dow introduced this olefin block copolymer, very unique technology. And of course, there are some more innovations to come. There are still about 5 or 6 permutations that will left, in my opinion, that we can probably go and make some different types of polyethylene. So if you look at the history, obviously, scientifically, it was made by a German chemist in 1898 by decomposition of diazomethane. But real commercially low density was accidentally discovered by ICI in 1933 by Fawcett and Gibson as a waxy solid powdery residue found while investigating high pressure, high temperature reactions of ethylene and benzaldehyde. So this was again an accidental discovery, and they found a commercial way of making polyethylene. In 1937, ICI started a 10 ton per year power plant, followed by 100 ton per year power plant, a production plant using autoclave process. That actually started on the first day of World War II. And if you know the history of World War II, polyethylene was instrumental in the victory of Allied forces because of polyethylene is one of the best insulating material out there. Before that was cotton, and cotton was not as good. So all the radar installations that require very good quality insulating material, polyethylene allowed that. And in fact, if you look at the contrast, in basically 70 years ago, 100 ton per year plant was made. Today, nowadays, low density plants are in the range of 200,000 to 350,000 tons per year, about 2,000 to 3,500 times larger than the first plant built about 70 years ago. So this is the autoclave process for polyethylene. Basically, this is a very high pressure process. You basically polymerize ethylene at 30,000 psi up to even 40,000 psi. You induce peroxide-induced free radical to initiate free radical polymerization, 20% conversion per pass, and you control the product properties by reactor temperature and pressure and some other additives, and you control the reactor by monomer feed and the peroxide feed. Of course, the problem with this process, of course, is an adiabatic process, so you cannot remove the heat of polymerization that readily. So BASF developed a tubular process later on to make high pressure low density polyethylene, where the pressure can go up to 40,000 psi. A tubular process is nothing but a mile-long tube, of course, arranged in a hairpin process, and the tubes are jacketed with hot water under pressure. So actually, this tubular plant is actually a net producer of steam. When you convert ethylene to polyethylene, it's a highly exothermic reaction, and the amount of polymer you can make depends on how much heat you can withdraw from the process. So this is the LDP molecular structure. By the way, till now, nobody knows how to characterize high pressure low density molecule. It's a very complex structure. All we know, basically, it has got a branch of a branch of a branch like a tree. It has got lots of long chain branching and lots of short chain branching, so-called by backbiting mechanism. But this was the first polyethylene developed in 1930s. very useful during the World War II, and after World War II was over, people had to start finding some other uses of the polymer, and they quickly realized that this can be injection molded. You can make a nice film out of it using a blown film process. So polyethylene became a very versatile polymer starting 1945 for civilian applications. And the advantage of low density polyethylene was excellent processability, high melt strength, so you can make a nice blown film bubble, great optics. It's a very clean resin, there is no catalyst involved. It's only peroxide induced free radical process. So for wire and cable insulation purpose, you don't want any metal residue. So it's a very nice jacketing material and insulating material. And the blown films made from this polymer shrinks in cross direction. So you can actually use a lot of shrink packaging applications from this polymer. So the application is, one of the main applications of low density polyethylene which is even used today, is a lot of the paper cartons or paper boards are coated with polyethylene. And that polyethylene is mostly high pressure low density. You can make foams out of it. Dow actually developed ethylene carbon monoxide copolymer which can degrade under sunlight for 6-pack loop carriers so that the birds don't get tangled up on that one. So if somebody leaves it outside, those 6-pack loop carriers will disintegrate under light into small pieces. Of course, injection molding in films. So this was the era of high pressure low density from 1939 to about 1955. The problem with high density polyethylene, of course, you can only make it over a limited density range, vicinity range. It was a low melting polymer, low modulus. Properties were not as great, especially ESCR toughness. And the main problem was that you need to really use high pressure process in excess of 30,000 psi pressure, which is highly energy intensive, highly capital intensive. So there was a lot of research taken to see whether you can polymerize ethylene under low pressure process. And by the way, polypropylene, you could not polymerize propylene to polypropylene using a free radical process. So naturally there was another lot of efforts went on to catalyze propylene to polypropylene. And the big breakthrough came, of course, in 1953 with Professor Ziegler in Germany, who actually invented a catalyst to polymerize ethylene into polyethylene in a low pressure process. Of course, what he found, he made high density polyethylene because there was no branches when you polymerize ethylene. So he actually made 960 type of very high crystallinity polyethylene. The Ziegler site catalyst is a multi-site catalyst. It actually produces a very broad molecular weight distribution and a broad composition distribution. And it was the first major evolution of polyethylene technology since the high pressure low density polyethylene. And of course, people made high density in 50s, and using the same catalyst, then of course companies made linear low densities in 70s and very low densities in 80s. So this was a main innovation in polyethylene in mid 50s that really took us to about 1990. And with same catalyst, you could make various classes of polyethylene. One very notable mention, of course, is Paul Hogan and Banks from Phillips Petroleum. They actually also developed a chrome oxide-based catalyst in 1950s in the same time frame as Professor Ziegler. In fact, they were trying to increase the octane rating of the gasoline, and in that process, they discovered again a waxy powdery substance which happened to be high-density polyethylene. And that chrome catalyzed polyethylene is used substantially even now as well. So I know Professor Ziegler gets a lot of mention in the literature, but I think Paul Hogan and Banks at Phillips Petroleum, they actually had another revolutionary catalyst discovered at the same time. So you had the catalyst, you could make polyethylene at low pressure. Now you have to develop the processes to make this polyethylene. And it turns out there are 3 classes of processes that were developed since 1950s. A slurry process, where you polymerize a polyethylene at low temperature and make it in a slurry. A gas-phase process, pioneered by Union Carbide in mid-60s, where you make polyethylene in the gaseous form. And Dow Chemical, Mitsui, and DSM developed a solution process, where you polymerize polyethylene at very high temperature that it dissolves in the solvent that you use. And of course, Union Carbide licensed their gas-phase process worldwide since 1970s, late 70s. And gas-phase process right now is one of the most predominantly used processes in the world to make polyethylene. And Phillips Petroleum also licensed their slurry process as well, which is also widely used in the world as well. Dow Chemical chose not to license their solution process, and we just started making some joint ventures to make our solution process available worldwide. And DSM also and my Mitsui are another pioneers in solution process. So the very interestingly, when people first made high density polyethylene, they actually didn't know what to do with it. The companies were making it and storing it in a warehouse. The first application they developed was hula hoops. and literally that was the first use of polyethylene, because high density polyethylene is very brittle, very stiff. You can't use packaging, you can't make films out of it. It's very low tear films. So the first use was hula hoops, and then after about 5 years, people started realizing that maybe you could make a bottles out of it. So there was a huge effort that went into making low molded bottles, gas tanks from high density polyethylene. And there you need very low melt index, very high molecular weight, broad MWD, high density polyethylene made using chrome catalyst, which gives you the desired Paris swirl. You need top load in the bottles, ESCR, environmental stress strike in the bottles, and toughness in the bottles. So in fact, a lot of the things you buy nowadays is all made using high density polyethylene, made by extrusion low molding process. Most of these are chrome resins, which are called household industrial containers. Of course, all the milk bottles you buy is high density polyethylene, and a lot of the healthcare things. So high density polyethylene is used by everybody every day, a big plastic. Other applications include pipes, cereal liners, injection molded cups and things like that. In fact, polyethylene pipe is one of the big applications nowadays for gas transport, for water transport. Pipes are so much durable compared to steel pipes, and it doesn't corrode. In fact, the pipes in Kobe, Japan survived the earthquake in Japan, a big earthquake. So polyethylene pipe is one of the very interesting applications of high density polyethylene. Another major evolution or revolution took place was a bimodal high density polyethylene. If you can make a polyethylene in two different reactors and control the molecular fraction you make in two reactors, you can actually make a very nice polymer. So in one reactor you make a low molecular weight homopolymer fraction, which gives you stiffness and processability. In other reactor you make high molecular weight copolymer fraction for tie chains for improved toughness, and then you mix those two fractions together. And those bimodal high density polyethylene were really developed by Hertz in 1960s, and they are continuously being developed even today for a lot of the pipe and other applications. So what you realize is that high density polyethylene are not suitable for packaging application because they are very low tear strength, they are like paper, they can tear very easily, very low impact strength, very low clarity. So people started making linear low density polyethylene by copolymerizing ethylene with octene, hexene or butene comonomers. And you bring down the density to 9-to-0 density, so you incorporate higher level of alpha olefin. And the first commercialization started in USA in 1975 by Union Carbide, and very quickly by Dow Chemical Company. And linear low density polyethylene is one of the very important polymer in all packaging application. And it has been slowly replacing high pressure low density polyethylene, because high pressure low density, great processability but not good mechanical properties. So linear low brings a lot of good mechanical properties, and people use 100% linear low or blends of low density and linear low in a lot of the films application. So just a little bit about unipole gas phase process. Carbide commercialized this gas phase process in mid-60s to make high density polyethylene. Later on they extended it to make linear low density polyethylene, and they were smart enough to make it available for worldwide licensing in 1977. And right around the same time we had the energy crisis in America because of the oil embargo, and Carbide was able to really capture imagination of people by saying that, hey, you can make the same polymers at very low energy consumption, at very low process. Of course, then Carbide also dominated the licensing of the process. Lot of customers in the world bought the Carbide license. And later on, they also developed the Unipole 2 process, where it's a gas phase process with two reactors in series. Of course, Dow Chemical acquired Union Carbide or merged with it in the year 2000. So Union Carbide, still the name exists, but it's only one subsidiary of Dow Chemical Company. So what are the applications of linear low density polyethylene? Linear low density basically goes in lots of films application. So a lot of films you see around you is basically more than likely made from linear low density polyethylene, either 100% or blends with low density. And there are other applications of linear low density as well. So there are all the food packaging application that you use nowadays. There is a lot of linear low density polyethylene and low density polyethylene is used. Another big application of linear law is in the scratch wrap. When you ship the pallet of goods, you need to unitize and secure the goods, and linear low density films are used in this so-called scratch wrap films market. So all this development was occurring in mid-50s to all the way to 90s. But zero wire catalyst is not as good catalyst. It makes a broad molecular distribution. It makes a very broad composition distribution. So it makes different molecular mix. So people were always interested in, can you make a polyethylene which is narrow MWD, which is a narrow composition distribution, and then basically Dow developed this constrained geometry catalyst, which is a type of metallocene catalyst that can be used in solution process at high temperature to make metallocene catalyzed polyethylene. Now, key capabilities of metallocene catalyst is basically it produces polyethylenes with narrow molecular distribution and narrow composition distribution. So you can make new classes of polyethylene now, polyethylene elastomers and elastomers. You can make nowadays metallocene based linear low density polyethylene. Dow has developed so-called enhanced polyethylenes. You can actually make some polymers like EPDM by the metallocene catalyst now. And it basically allowed to connect properties to product structure and product structure to manufacturing processes. Now metallocene catalyst was with us for a long time actually. In 1950s onwards, people were developing metallocene catalysts, but they were not commercially viable till Professor Kaminsky in Germany developed MMAO as a co-catalyst to increase the catalyst efficiency sufficiently that you can use it in a commercial process. So metallocene catalysts were there since late 50s, but it took about 40 years to make it commercial. So these are the applications of CDC metallocene polyethylene. The metallocene polyethylene goes in sealants, packaging films, for impact modification of polypropylene. In fact, metallocene rubber is one of the big application is impact modified polypropylene. So all your car bumper fascia, which is made up of rubber modified polypropylene, more than likely a metallocene polyethylene is rubber is used as an impact modifier. Then Dow actually, all this time people are only developing random copolymers. But random copolymers has some issues. For example, as you put more comonomer along the chain, you lower the density crystallinity, but you also lower the melting point, crystallizing temperature, you lower the heat resistance. But if you can make the same arrangement in a block copolymer, then actually you can still maintain the high melting points coming from the high crystallinity blocks, and you can maintain the low crystallinity soft blocks to give you overall low crystallinity flexible polyethylene. So this is the catalytic block polymer technology that Dow developed, and I'm going to go show you the video. It starts. Yep. So what you do, you polymerize ethylene with octene by two different catalysts. So there's a catalyst which does not incorporate octene, it incorporates octene very well, and there's a catalyst that does not incorporate octene or comonomer. So it makes a hard block. So now you put two catalysts in the reactor with a chain settling agent that settles the chain between the two catalyst sites. So right now this is a catalyst that incorporates octene to make a soft segment. So these are the branches. And there's a catalyst that actually makes so-called high density polyethylene. And now there's a chain settling agent that basically settles the polymer back and forth between the two catalyst sites. And all you do this in a single reactor basically. So this is a so-called chain settling agent. It settles the chain between one catalyst site to the other catalyst site. And one catalyst makes the high density blocks, other catalyst makes the low density blocks. So that's how you generate a block copolymer in a reactor. And depending on the amount of settling agent, you can actually make a polymer which is immiscible, not coupled together, to polymer which is highly coupled together, and you can see the optics changes dramatically depending upon the amount of settling agent you use in the reactor. And actually you can get sterolites in a very low density polyethylene for this olefinic block copolymer. So these are the unique attributes of olefinic block copolymer. It is high temperature resistance, faster processing, excellent elastic properties, and improved abrasion. You get a high melting point at a low density compared to the random copolymers, which gives you the higher heat resistance. You also get high crystallizing temperatures. compared to random copolymers, which gives you faster setup times in injection molding machines. And you get very good elastic recovery compared to random copolymers, as good as the styrenic block copolymers. So if you look at the evolution of polyethylene, you started with conventional linear low density polyethylene in 70s, then the metallocene catalyzed linear low densities in 90s, to now block copolymers in 2005. So you can go from a very broad distribution polymer to a narrow distribution polymer to now a blocky copolymer. A very interesting evolution of polyethylene technology. And this is a continuum of polyethylene that Dow Chemical has, that you can have polyethylene with polypropylene crystallinity all the way to ethylene crystallinity and everything in between. So it's an entire polyolefin spectrum from polyethylene side to the polypropylene side. So just a couple of things on current and future trends. In future, there will be a lot of emphasis on high throughput catalyst R&D. Cemix is pioneering in that area. That high throughput screening technology will allow us to develop catalysts in a much shorter development time frame. These are, for example, in a picture of a high throughput reactor. You can actually have about 50 experiments done in a day to basically screen various catalysts. And you can shorten the development time from months to weeks as a result of these high throughput screens. So people will continue to capitalize on metallocene catalysts. The next holy grail is actually develop the polar linear copolymer such as EVA. All the catalysts that I mentioned right now, the polar copolymers or polar comonomers are poison to the catalyst. If you can incorporate polar comonomers using a catalyst, that will make an entirely new class of polyethylene. We'll continue to use high throughput catalyst screening, and we'll have new commercial uses of polyethylene as we go forward. Of course, this is a nice Greenpeace triangle, and what polyolefins have been doing is basically replacing PVC, polyurethanes, some ABS, polystyrene, PET with polyolefins. So in future, people will have access to the low-cost feed in Middle East. So a lot of the big plants will be built in the Middle East. Mega trains, we are talking about £1 billion per year. I don't know how much that translates to per day, but I'll do the calculation. But now the trains are coming which can make £1 billion per year. There will be a lot of emphasis over sustainability, and also a lot of emphasis over degradability of polyethylene. You can actually degrade polyethylene by new additives called oxo-biodegradable, where it chops the chain into small enough fragments that eventually bugs can eat it up. So you can actually degrade polyethylene going forward. So expect more to come from polyethylene, new catalyst development, new products, new performance attributes. And if you look at the history of polyethylene, there was always a very good collaboration between academia and industry. And that collaboration really resulted in a lot of innovations and developments. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions or comments? I just think this is fascinating. On the rare occasions when I go to the grocery store, I continually point out to my wife, look at what they can do with food now because of these different plastics. I don't know that she's very impressed with that. Something I always
So what people don't realize is actually glass is a very bad packaging material. It's very heavy and very energy consuming. Paper and cardboard is also very energy consuming and not as good environmental friendly. So, and of course there's a lot of backlash against plastics all the time. In fact, just yesterday FDA came out and said that there's no problem with the baby bottles made from polycarbonate. There's no bisphenol left in baby bottles. But those kind of scare comes quite frequently. The plastics probably are here to stay, and we can actually burn polyethylene and get the energy back out of it. So,
Well, let me just remind everyone, if you came in late, if you enjoyed the talk, you'll love the book. The book upon which these talks are based will be ready in October, I think Bill tells us.
yeah.
And there's a markup copy, a preliminary copy out there, and if you will drop your business card in the little glass dish, I think Bill tells us that ACS Books gives us a 40% discount. And right now we're scheduled for a break, and the session will resume at 10:30. We appreciate you being here. We look forward to the next several talks. See you again in a few